Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys, and today we are talking about The Night Visitors by Carol Goodman. This book is a quick and easy read. I got through it in about a day and a half. If you love a good thriller with a bit of mystery tied in, you would absolutely love this. It's the kind of book that keeps you guessing, keeps you turning those pages well into the dead of night, and I just love that. So, let's talk about it. Let's just jump right on into it. The book opens up with a woman named Alice and her young son named Orrin. Orrin's like 9 or 10 years old, and they're at the train station, or the bus station, and we quickly learn that they are fleeing from an abusive situation. Orrin's father is incredibly abusive, and they are on the run. At the train station, she calls a women's shelter that she heard about, and she's talking to them, and she's frantic. And she is telling them that they need to be put somewhere where they cannot be found because their lives are in danger. The woman assures her, like, don't worry, we deal with situations like this all the time. We will get you somewhere where you are safe. So she's told where to go. She's told that a woman named Maddie will be there to meet her at the other end, and that everything's going to be fine. Do not worry. It'll be fine. So she hangs up the phone, and when she looks, Orrin has come back because he's kind of wandering around the station. Orrin has come back over to where she is, and he hands her 2 tickets to the town that they're going to. And she's kind of like, that's weird. How did he hear that? Where did he get the money? But, you know, they're dealing with something right now, so she doesn't push it or question him. She's just like, thanks. Another thing that I should kind of mention is, along with being a mystery and a thriller, this book is also a bit of a ghost story. And maybe not even a bit of a ghost story. That's a big part of it, which was kind of unexpected. With how the book was going, when the kind of ghost story portion of it came into play, it was unexpected, but I really enjoyed it. So we move from Alice and Orrin, and we go and we see Maddie. Maddie has just gotten the call from the shelter that she's to meet these people. She gets ready. It's, you know, the middle of the night. And there's a snowstorm happening outside where she is. It's very stormy, very cold. She lets her dog out, and then it's not until he starts barking to get let in that she remembers that he put him out. Like, she's getting a little older, and her memory's not quite what it used to be. So she lets her dog in, feels really bad about having forgotten about him, and then she goes to the bus station, and there's like a little cafe, corner store type thing, and she goes in, and there's a woman who's working there, and the woman's, you know, it's a small town, and this woman's an immigrant to the country, and while Maddie's in there, 2 guys come in, and one of the guys start giving her a really hard time, and just kind of just saying nasty things to her, to the woman working there, and Maddie gets really upset and kind of runs the guy off. So you're kind of, right off the bat, you're kind of set up with the kind of woman that Maddie is. You know, she's not going to take any crap from anyone. She is here. She will, you know, she's a defender of people. She wants to keep people safe and protected. So this work that she does in helping with the women's shelter seems very well fitted to her. Shortly thereafter, Alice and Orrin arrive. Maddie is immediately taken with Orrin. There's something about him that reminds her of her little brother. And her little brother, we learn, has passed away. And he passed away when he was around the same age that Orrin is. So there's, you know, they're the same age. They look a little similar, you know, hair color and whatnot. And Maddie's just really taken with him. He seems like a really sweet, smart kid. Alice, on the other hand, is a little less friendly. She's a little sharp with her words. She's seems annoyed about everything, but Maddie kind of writes it off as, you know, it's okay. They're on the run for their lives. It's fine if she's not feeling, you know, like being sociable. So Maddie begins to take them to the women's shelter, which is in a convent that's run by nuns. But she thinks to herself, you know, my home's closer. No one would know to look for them there because it's a private home, you know, and there's just something about them that she really wants to protect them herself. She doesn't want to drop them off at the convent, at least not tonight. She's like, well, for tonight, just come to my place, and then tomorrow we can figure it out. And Oren's really happy about that because he's really scared about the prospect of going to the convent or to anywhere, really. He's just scared. He doesn't want to get separated from Alice. So Maddie's happy to relieve him of those fears for now. So she takes them home, she feeds them, she gets them into bed. That night she's doing some laundry, like all of their clothes that they were wearing, and she finds a knife in Oren's pocket, and the knife is bloodied, and she gets a little nervous about seeing it. It makes her wonder what happened before they ran. There's something about it, Maddie knows that domestic abuse victims sometimes often end up paying for crimes when they were just defending themselves. If you saw last week's book talk, there's similar themes, if you'll remember, but so what Maddie does is, after a moment's thought, is she just drops the knife into the washer as well, so the blood will be washed away, any fingerprints will be washed away, and now it's just a pocket knife again, and not a potential weapon that was used. So the next day, I think on the news, Maddie's watching it, and she hears about a man who was found dead in his apartment back in the town where Alice and Oren came from. Yeah, so of course Alice is like, oh my god, okay, well, not Alice, Maddie's like, okay, well, clearly something bad happened before they left. But also kind of on the plus side, which sounds bad, I know, but on the plus side, he's dead, so he's not in pursuit of them, so that kind of makes the whole situation now less urgent in that they don't need to be running and hiding from him. So Alice learns this information as well, and then she's kind of like, okay, we need to, get everything in order, figure out what we're doing, and then do it. So the storm is still raging. Maddie says that they can spend another night with her, and we start to learn a bit about Maddie through flashbacks. We learn that the home that she lives in, it's a big, beautiful home, although it's kind of falling apart because it's old and it hasn't really been kept up over the years. But we learn that that was her family home where she grew up. But one day, about 35 years ago, her whole family was killed. When she was away at graduate school, her whole family was killed in the house from carbon monoxide poisoning. Her father was a judge, like a big-time judge in the town, and they were very wealthy, hence the home. So her father, her mother, and her brother all died in the house. Shortly thereafter, the police show up, and Maddie is talking to them. She knows them, of course, because she's lived in this town her whole life. And she works with this homeless shelter, so of course she knows the police. This particular officer, she's grown up with him her whole life. They don't really have a relationship at this point. Like, there's no friendship there, which we learn more about later, but he tells her that he's heard of a woman and a child who are on the run, and according to one of the bus drivers, two people who fit that description were dropped off here in their town. And so Frank is kind of like, have you seen anyone like that? And Alice is like, nope, haven't seen anyone like that. And Frank's like, he's kind of suspicious. He's not entirely buying it. But eventually, what's he going to do? He has to take her for a word, and she goes. Alice and Oren had been hiding at that point because Alice is still feeling very suspicious of Maddie. She's not trusting her completely, and she's like, oh great, she's going to turn us in. But of course Maddie doesn't. She keeps them safe, just like she promised she would. Now, as this is going on as well, we learn that a social worker had been dealing with Oren and Alice back in New Jersey, where they came from. And his name, I think, was Scott, and he had been dealing with them a lot. And so at one point, when Maddie takes him into the town to get some groceries and bits and bobs and whatnot, Maddie goes into the store. Alice and Oren stay in the car. Alice says to Oren, I'll be right back, you stay right there, and then she goes to the pharmacy across the street. While she's in there, she picks up the phone that they have. It's not a pay phone, it's the store's phone. and she makes a call to Scott's cell phone. She wants to catch up with him, tell him she's safe, find out what's going on. And when she does, someone answers the phone, but it's not Scott, it's Davis, Oren's father. And she finally realizes that Davis isn't the one that's dead. She puts the pieces together that Scott must have went to the house after they had left to check up on them, and Davis had killed him then. So she's like, oh my God. She hangs up the phone hoping it hadn't been long enough, or that, Davis doesn't know how to track them. And, she just realizes she has made a big mistake. As all of this is going on, Oren, when they're back at the house, Oren begins to say weird things, do weird things. He talks about the spirit he can feel in the house, a little boy named Caleb, which he knew that Caleb lived there because Maddie has put him in Caleb's old room, let him play with Caleb's old toys. So he knows about Caleb, so Alice sort of thinks it's just that, but the things he says makes Maddie think that maybe he is picking up on a presence in the house. And this all sounds wacky, I know, as I'm telling you, but it makes for a really compelling story. So Alice is now terrified because she's worried that Davis is going to find them. Maddie is a little stressed out because she doesn't know what to do with them, if she should keep them with her, if she should bring them to the convent. Then shortly after that, she gets a text from her coworker and friend Doreen saying that Alice isn't Oren's mother. The text goes on to say that Alice is the babysitter, that Oren lived alone with his dad, and Alice was the woman who was hired to babysit him. Now, there's no question of whether, Oren's father was abusing him. There are marks all over his body. There are marks on Alice's body. And, as was kind of the case in The Great Alone as well, Alice herself could take it. But once she saw Oren getting hurt after, that was kind of the last straw. And she's like, even Oren at one point himself tells her he's going to kill us if we don't leave. So I'm going to tell you now is the time to click off if you don't want spoilers. Even though I know this book talk's been a bit of a jumble, just because there's so much, there's so much going on, and it's hard to talk about without talking about all of it. But if you love a good mystery, a good thriller, if you love not knowing who is who and what is what until the very last second, you will love this book. I would definitely recommend it. I found this copy at Walmart for like $15. It's not hard to find, and it's not expensive. So yeah. All right. But for the rest of you, here's kind of what else happens as we're untangling this mess. At this point, we're kind of just waiting for Davis to arrive. We know that he's coming. We know that he would have found out where she is, and that call was the fatal mistake that she made. We learn more about Maddie's history. We learned that when she was a teenager, she spent time in a detention facility juvenile detention facility because her father was a judge, and he was a very serious, very no-nonsense kind of man. And at one point, the local police chief or whatever, had found her in a car making out with his own son, who is now also the police officer that she was dealing with earlier. And they were both charged with public indecency, with their own children, for just something as simple as making out in the back of a car. So she was sent to a juvenile detention center. He was sent to a military school. So she was gone for 3 months. He was gone for 6 months. And it was just, that's so weird. Why would you do that to your own kids for something so simple? It's not like they were out stealing cars or vandalizing places. They were just in love and doing that. So she knows what it's like to be put into the system, and she doesn't want that to happen to Oren and Alice. And whatever Alice's relationship to Oren, it's clear that his mother's not in the picture. We later find out that she OD'd on drugs and has been dead for most of Oren's life. So whatever Alice's relationship to Oren is, even though she's the babysitter and not his mother, it's very clear that she loves him very much and she cares about him very much. And so because of that, Maddie makes it her, goal to protect them, to continue protecting them. Now, as we reach the kind of climax here, I'm not going to go into everything because we would be here for way too long. And this book, I'm trying to keep this book talk kind of short because it's more of a fluffier, light book than some of the heavier ones we read, so I don't want to get I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. Because last week's book talk was like a half an hour. That's too long. So we're going to be skimming over some of the details and some of the other people that end up coming to the house. But what happens eventually is Davis does make it. He becomes he's very angry when he arrives. He wants them to come with him. Oren's hiding in the house. He's keeping out of sight. And Davis is yelling at him to come. He's got a gun on Maddie and Alice, and we're like, what's going to happen? Eventually he takes them into her father's study. That's kind of set up as it was when her father was alive, and while they're in there, she sees Frank, who's the police officer, in the window, and so she's facing the window, and Davis is facing her, and then Alice is kind of off to the side, so she's the only one that sees him. Eventually, he breaks the window, comes in, and kills Davis, saving them from Davis. At this point, we still don't know where Oren is, so Alice runs, she goes and finds him, and then they go and they run and hide. And the reason they run and hide is because they can hear Alice talking to Frank, and he is seeming very still aggressive, and he asks her, why do you still have all these papers? Because what the papers are on her father's study is papers about her past, newspaper articles, things like that Davis had found. And he was showing them to Alice. And Frank is kind of like, why do you have all these papers here? And what Davis had learned by looking through the papers was that it wasn't all as cut and dry as it had been made to look like in the papers. It turns out that her father was a crooked judge who had been sending children unnecessarily to detention centers because he got a cut of the money every time a child was sent there. The carbon monoxide poisoning was intentional, but that didn't go quite as planned either. With the mother, it was fine. She was asleep in bed, and that's how she went. The father had been in the study, and he wrote a suicide note, and he was going to shoot himself. And then we find out that Maddie hadn't actually been away at grad school. She had been home visiting, and that she was out on a date with Frank, and she came home. And when she came home, she got knocked unconscious, and that's kind of all she remembers. What she doesn't remember is that Frank's dad was there, and he knew that Maddie's dad was getting ready to kind of come clean about the racket they were running. And Frank's dad couldn't let that happen because he was involved in it as well. And so to make sure that that suicide note didn't get out, he's there to kill them. And he kills Caleb, who was, Maddie's brother. But what we find out in regards to that as well is that Maddie's brother, Caleb, was actually Maddie's son that she had when she was very young, and that her family was raising as their own until she was old enough that she could take him and they could go and start a life together. But that didn't happen because Frank's dad killed him. And so Frank brings all that up now, and he was like, it was me that knocked you unconscious. He's like, and you're just lucky you didn't see me, because if you had we would have had to kill you too. So he was in on it, and now she's kind of like, so he had been in on that the whole time as well. So now we've kind of reached a pitch, and since he knows that Maddie knows that he had been part of it all that time, he's like, we know that we're getting to the point where he feels he has to kill her now as well. And they're out in the barn, and we, the reader, know that Alice and Oren are hiding up in the rafters. And Maddie and Frank are talking down on the main floor. And Maddie is trying very hard to convince him to not do anything crazy. She says, I've kept many secrets for many, many years, and I'll keep yours. Like, I've kept my father's secrets for many years, and now I'll keep yours. And, she's talking him down. She's starting to talk him down, but Alice is up in the barn rafters, and she sees a big metal hook that was used to, put hay bales, to lift them up and put them up in the rafters. And she just releases the hook, and that gets him right in the back of the head. And so that's kind of the end of there's even more. You guys, so much goes on. There's so much murder and mystery in this that, like I said, I can't talk about it all or or we'd run out of time. But yeah, so, and then after that, Oren mentions that the spirit has left. And the spirit had been Caleb, and now that it seemed like everything had come to light and everyone who was involved had paid the price, the spirit was now able to just go. And Oren sees the Caleb spirit leave with the Frank spirit, because what we learned as well was Maddie had gotten pregnant with when she was with Frank, before they both got sent off to their respective, juvenile detention centers, and that Caleb was Frank and Maddie's son. So it doesn't have quite the dramatic effect when you're just talking about it, but reading the book, it was really good, and the story's paced so well. That's something that I love so much, when a story keeps a good pace and it keeps you interested. None of the words are wasted in this book. None of the pages drag on. It's quick and to the point, and I loved it. So yeah, if you love a good murder mystery, I think you would enjoy this. I'm sure even if you watched all the way to the end, you could still read it, because so much other than the things I mentioned happens. And look at this. This woman, Carol Goodman, she's also written all of these books. That is a long list. I haven't read any of the others, but I'll definitely keep an eye out for more now that I read The Night Visitors and enjoyed it so much. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this book talk video. Next week, I've got a doozy of one for you, so keep an eye out for that. And I will see you on Monday. Bye, guys.